let's be honest, it's not, although it is breaking news, it's not groundbreaking news in the sense that we knew this was coming. He had delayed the announcement, which did lead to some speculation. Was he going to? Wasn't he going to? He did say earlier in the month that it was his intention to run, and his wife, the First Lady Jill Biden, said back in February that when she was asked if he'd run again, was there a question of that happening? She said there was no question and it was just about a formality. What's also interesting is during his 2020 campaign, he had talked a lot about how he was the bridge for the next generation of leaders and that he was almost a transitional guy. But it's clear from that video and that 3-minute video, a very highly produced video, that he still wants to run again. And it is very likely that the person he'll be facing is Donald Trump, by far the front runner for the Republican presidential nomination, setting America up for a rematch of 2020.
The trouble is that Democrats and the general public in America don't think he should be running.
So this is the thing. There are lots of polls in recent months which have consistently showed that Americans don't want him or Donald Trump to run again. And for President Biden, and just citing an NBC poll, a lot of those that said they don't want him to run cited his age. He is going to be 81 in November. By the time, if he does get a second term and he finishes that for the 4 years and leaves the White House, he'll be 86 years old. He'll be close to 90. The last president whose age was brought up in this way was Ronald Reagan. He was 77 when he left the White House in 1989, and he was seen as pushing it. President Biden's been asked about his age, and he has said that people are fair to ask him and question that, but he has also said that the only answer he would give to those questioning his age is just watch me.
And he sort of says we've got to finish the job. What job is he talking about?
This is something that it's a repeated mantra from his State of the Union address earlier this year. The fact is that President Biden can now say to the American people, look at what I've achieved, his legislative accomplishments. He has, for example, passed a very, moderate gun safety package, which is quite rare for a president to do. He's also talked about abortion rights in this country. We know last year Roe v. Wade was overturned, and we know that it's not really been popular with the American people. Also, remember, his party did pretty well in the midterm elections, which is quite rare for the party in power to achieve that. And so he has taken that as a sign that the American people are confident in him. But what was interesting in that video is that he did very much make a direct attack on MAGA extremists. These are members of the Republican Party who are seen as very to the far right of it. He used clips from January the 6th, Capitol riots, to make his point. But he himself, over the last 2 years, hasn't done much to heal political divisions. What he has done, as I mentioned, he's achieved big legislative wins. He's also built this really solid alliance against Russia following its invasion of Ukraine. And these are the things he can point at and say to the Americans, we can finish the job.
If, as indeed you suggest is the case, he ends up running against Donald Trump, is he a good match? Would he offer Democrats, is there a case for saying that he would offer Democrats the best chance of winning?
Well, there's been no pressure on him to really announce his rerun any earlier. So, we mentioned before that it's not really a surprise that he's running. There were a few delays to it, but there's nobody else that really you could point at in the Democratic Party in the way that you can with the Republican Party, perhaps, to say, OK, Biden could potentially have this as a challenger. The only two people that are running are Robert Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson, who are seen as real long shot bids. So I think it's fair to say that the Democratic Party, by and large, are behind him. There have been those behind the scenes who have questioned his physical ability, his mental ability, given his age. But as far as the Democratic Party are concerned, it would appear that they very much believe he is their guy, and that also the Vice President, Kamala Harris, who herself suffers from low approval ratings, is still seen as the ideal running mate for him. So I think I think the fact that he's announced his bid and I think shows that the Democratic Party is very much behind him.
And there's a very real practical consideration here, and that is that the campaign trail, I mean, we're talking about an election that is not happening to the back end of next year, is very punishing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, America's a huge country, so you have to tour. They don't tour all the states. Obviously, the key states that they know where the election will be won. And there's obviously, of course, again that feeds into the queries that people have about President Biden's age. But look, in a few months, he's set to go off to Australia and to Japan. He's continuing business as normal. I think what you'll see next is he'll start putting together his presidential campaign, his campaign manager, finance manager, pollsters, state leaders, volunteers, all sorts of things. Donald Trump is already pretty much campaigning since he announced that he was running last November. But I think it's fair to say that from now on, what we see from Biden, certainly from Trump, will basically be them campaigning for the 2024 presidential election. And believe me, having covered an election before here, they come around very, very quickly.
They do indeed. Well, thank you very much indeed.